Top of the evening, spicy people, and welcome to another shamrocking episode of The Spice on the Hill, a dedicated podcast for Dulwich Hamlet Women and the reserves, where we're bringing a lot of good vibes, friendly, informative, and a lot of spicy stuff with a kick, Irish style. And I'm your host, Johnny Hourigan, aka your little leprechaun that leads you to the pot of gold over the rainbow, the hills, or the fields of Nafarai. Correct me if I'm pronouncing it right. And this is episode number 6. This is a St. Paddy's spicy punch. Even though St. Paddy's is way long gone, but it's never too late for a pint of spicy Guinness that burns hotter with a punch that you could definitely kick it real good. So let's introduce our lucky guest joining in from the St. Paddy's Spicy Punch. Our first guest has a journey of a player before hanging up his boots, and he was a right-hand man for the previous gaffer that joined earlier this season before stepped up to take over before Christmas. He's a massive guy, so let's welcome Dulwich Hamlet Women's manager, Richie Byrne, aka the Irish Beast from Dublin's fair city. When a girl's so pretty, I'll ask him, did he ever met a person called Sweet Mary Malloy? Hello, Richie.
How you doing, Johnny? All right?
I'm all right. How are you?
Very good, Paddy. Thanks very much for having me on the podcast.
Lovely to have you. Another Irish connection to another, because, Hourigan, Byrne.
There
And
you
obviously
go.
we've got another Irish connection, well, one and the other is not, but we'll delve into that later on. So let's introduce our second guest. And this person who always makes sure everyone is safe and happy at Champion Hill and at training center, and always goes for a drink at the end of the match or the end of the day, socializing, talks about serious matters with some banter sometimes, maybe not. It's Dulwich Hamlet's groundsman, Joe McGin.
Good evening to you all, and thank you for letting me join the podcast.
Love it to have you, Joe. And let's introduce our final lucky guest. It's Dulwich Hamlet's fan and part of the Pepper Army. He could be your bodyguard and your long-lost pal. And he's not that small, but you call him Big Al. Hello, Big Al.
Hi, Johnny. Good to be here. Clearly, I'm the token Englishman today.
Oh, yeah. But don't worry. We can really entertain with Irish, English, what Celtic connection we can do.
No worries.
So, now we got our lucky guests in the firing hot seat, metaphorically speaking and literally, if they're lucky enough to feel the burn. We'll be exploring two halves, pun intended, of how did they all begin their journey respectively, for Richie, Joe, and Big Al, what they do outside of Dulwich Hamlet, and what if they never got into football at all, or never heard of Dulwich Hamlet at all. Followed by the recent matches the first team have played in the March of Madness, but looking at how they started not so good, exiting out of the Capital Senior Cup without any silverware to chase before they pivoted their focus on the remaining league matches left to play, which is the positive to look forward in that direction. And we will look at the final month of the matches in April, and of course I'll provide a reserves update on the recent matches and upcoming matches as well. So we are live on Mixler, so you can ask me, Richie, Joe, and Big Al, whichever way of questions you want to ask. Please feel free. So I have a look and have more discussions towards the end. And you can listen back to this podcast of the latest episode on the available platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube of your choice, what devices you're listening, along with the previous 5 episodes if you have already caught up to date. Or it's your lucky day that you're listening for the first time live and want to know what happened in the past episodes, listen back and you'll know what's been going on. So now, gents, as we take a trip on the ferry across the Irish Sea in search of the pot of gold, hopefully we get lucky tonight. Let's begin with the first half of drinks right after this advert, and I'm hoping none of us will be drunk by the end of this. but we'll see. Hello, and welcome to the first half as the whistle blows, or shall we say, the first orders of drinks as the bell rings. So let's drown ourselves down to the past where our lucky guests started their journey. Richie, where did you start your footballing career as a player, and what made you get into football other than with Irish sports? And what at some point you wanted to pursue coaching pathways after hanging up your playing career?
I started playing football in Dublin basically because my grandfather played a lot of football when he was young. One of my uncles played also. Both of them played for a team called Belvedere. I was then brought up to the pitch that was near to my house, and the team that was there was called Kilmount Boys. I played there for a year, and then I went up to Grange Woodbine. From Grange Woodbine, I was taken to Stella Maris, who are another illustrious team in Dublin. Played there for quite a few years, had a successful time there, and then was poached by Belvedere. So my grandfather, my uncle, and me have all played for Belvedere. So it's been a family tradition to play for Belvedere. And from Belvedere, then I got taken to Shamrock Rovers, which I got into the first team, and then was bought to Scotland by Dunfermline, and then bought from Dunfermline up to Aberdeen, where I played for signed a 3.5 year deal there. And that's when I had a sort of career-ending hamstring injury. Played a fair few games with the injury, and then my contract wasn't renewed. Moved to another club, went down to Oldham, and then Inverness back in Scotland, and then back down to Newcastle to Darlington. So finished there. That was my journey pretty much. There's a lot that went on in between all of that though. But once I finished there, I came down to London and decided to try and fix me own injury, and went on a more of a learning curve where I became a personal trainer and then became a strength and conditioning coach. And then I began working for Arsenal, and I came to Dulwich Hamlet from Maria, the previous manager who was at Arsenal too. She brought me down, and yeah, things didn't work out so great at the start of the season. Then I took over once Maria left, and we'll see where we go from here. We'll see what happens.
And Richie, when I heard that you were once a player, and I looked at your career list of when you started and before you finished, what were the best highlights that you gathered when you were playing between clubs in Dublin, Scotland, and England?
I would have to say the best memories. The Irish Cup final played, even though we lost it. Straight away the next year when I went to Scotland, I got to the Scottish Cup final with Dunfermline. That was their first time getting to a cup final in 35 years or 40 years. So that was a very good team we played in. We played against Celtic, probably the best Celtic team one of the best Celtic teams that's ever been. The Henrik Larsson team. In Henrik Larsson's last game for Celtic in the cup final, we were 1-0 up. Thought we were going to do it, and then Larsson came up and scored 2 goals, and they got a third goal then to finish us off in the last few minutes. So yeah, that was a tough one, but that was another big day. That was an amazing day. And then playing for Aberdeen in the UEFA Cup, probably the biggest game I played in was against Atletico Madrid over there when they had Aguero, Maxi Rodriguez, Diego Forlan, Simeo, Luis Garcia, Maniche, Thiago Motta. They had an unbelievable team.
Wow.
We lost 2-0. We got beaten. Aguero got a penalty, and they scored a free kick. Simeo scored a free kick off the post, off the keeper, and then in. So we had a couple of chances as well. We could have scored. It could have been an even game. We had two very good chances that we should have probably scored. And then, obviously, probably the best highlight in my career was scoring a right foot volley for the Irish team against Scotland, the Irish international, the senior B team. So that was a warm up to see, and a couple of the boys got in the squad for the first team. Unfortunately, my hamstring went after that, and I wasn't part of the setup then, So that would have been nice, but to get a goal for Ireland was very good. That was probably one of the best feelings I've ever had in football, scoring for your country.
I'm sorry to about how it ended your career.
These things happen, That's why I became a strength and conditioning coach, to try and reduce that possibility for as many young players as possible.
That's very, very thoughtful and very spiritual to hear. And, I kind of relate, well, not relate, but I have gone through some similar injuries myself, like ligaments and hamstring, which was a minor, very minor, not severe. Otherwise, I would have not recovered, I said, about a month or more than 6 months.
Hmm.
But injury is just part of life.
Part of the game, most people will get injured. You just got to be very lucky to steer clear of the big ones. And obviously, when you do get injured, hopefully you have a good team of physios, doctors, surgeons, and strength and conditioning coaches. They're very important. It's very important to fix an injury when it happens, fix it the first time. It's also very important to have injury prevention protocols. And I think, the sport is improving nowadays, that most clubs do their best. There can always be improvements. And I think players don't appreciate injury prevention tactics until they get injured. So that's something that I think could be improved in the game, that young players, it's mandatory for them to go through a lot of injury prevention. They need to be made more aware of how long it actually takes to get back. And the fact that if you need an operation, it's very hard to get fully back to where you were following many operations. So it's best to steer clear of injury. As we know, prevention is better than cure.
Exactly. Like I do warm-ups, whether football or go for a run or go to the gym. It's important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, no wonder why, people heard like how the journey of a player before becoming a manager is not straightforward, but it comes with pitfalls before you get yourself back up to find another purpose of what football means. Like not just for the player, but people who respect the game and want to contribute in the game.
Exactly. When there's a lot of players that become managers due to unforeseen circumstances. There's a lot of young managers that have had to retire for whatever reason, and there's a lot of people that they retire and they're never heard from again in the game. So we do lose a lot of players, a lot of experience, and unfortunately, that's part of it. Most of the top managers have had some sort of injury or haven't had the best career.
Mm.
And this is the sport. You just want to try and bestow as much information about the game and as much experience as you can to other people and help them get the best for their career. Because in my opinion, it's the best sport in the world. So if you can give as many people as many good times as you've had, then you're doing something well.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Richie. And now I can ask Joe, where did you first hear about Dulwich Hamlet before the current iteration of the women's team and the reserves came in?
I had a friend, I went to see them play first and foremost in, I think, 1996. So, but one of my friends actually played for Dulwich Hamlet. His name is Peter Kingston. He's on the all-time appearance records. He made over 400 appearances. I think I went to see him once at the old stadium, so I'd only ever been to the old stadium once. Then in 1996, I went to see Dulwich Hamlet play on a Tuesday night when they were experimenting with kick-ins. So if the ball went out for a throw-on, you kick it in. I went to 2 games on a Tuesday night because I was playing over the back there, 5-a-side. So we'd kick off at 6 o'clock. Then we'd go and watch the main team play. And it was horrible to watch because people would just put the ball down and pump it into the area. So it wasn't the best experience. Then fully I introduced myself to Dulwich 2014, and it had to do with Wilston. There used to be a player who played for Burnley called Glenn Little, and you can watch it on YouTube, but he scored the best goal. He played for Reading, Burnley. So, yeah, and the football, the standard of football and the way Dulwich played had a massive influence that I would actually return. So I've been going to the club really ever since they lost at home to Wilston. I think it was 4-2, I think. And he scored the best goal I've ever seen at Dulwich Hamlet. And, you know, because I wanted to go there for the football. I had been to Dulwich Hamlet to watch a couple of Fisher games, funny enough, because they were higher up the ladder than Dulwich. So I'd been there to see them play Newport County in about 2010 as well. So, you know, that was my first, when I went back to Dulwich permanently, you know, every other fixture I went. I remember Wilston got promotion, and so I started going the season after fully, you know. I remember must have been right near the end of the season. So, yeah, so that was the first time I really got involved with Dulwich Hamlet and going to a lot of games, you know.
And
so.
Well, I was going to say, what made you, you know, want to be, you know, the groundsman that looks after the players and the fans?
Yeah, well, I was just a fan myself till I'd say 2018 when we moved back home after we got kicked out. So I used to work in electrical stuff, so I'd bring stuff up to the club because when we moved back into Dulwich Hamlet, the place was a mess because they just locked the doors and threw us out. So I, with Claire Keeble, Chris, we would go up to the club and you know, just bring up some electrics, just general clearing up because the place was absolutely a tip. You know, it was like a building site. They just shut it down. It was rat infested, and that was the first time I got involved in any kind of like voluntary work with Dulwich. Really, you know, just from there, just after we got kicked out. You know, I'd been on the march previously, but I knew a few people, you know, travelling away, but I had no involvement with the club really at that time. You know, so yeah.
So when the current women's team came in, when they were once called AFC Phoenix.
Yeah, it was Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah. I remember in the first episode, David said that you, him, and
Mishi, yeah.
First saw them in the cup final when they're still called AFC Phoenix at the time before they joined the umbrella brand of Dulwich Hamlet.
Yeah, that's probably correct. I can't remember if the bar was open or not. I think it must have been because I don't really remember too much about it. I'm joking, but so I might have seen it once. You know, so somebody reminded because I used to go and watch other games up there anyway. You know, so I wouldn't specifically remember that. You know what I mean? Specifically remember that, but you know, if they said I was there, you know, I'd been to loads of games with Dave and Mishi before. So yeah, that's where I stand on that because yeah, I did go to other games there as well. So you know, there's always a cup final up there. You know, of other teams playing. I actually played at Champion Hill myself. So yeah.
And Joe, what did you think of the team, the women's first team and the reserves team back then? And how long did that make you fall in love with them 7 years on?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's astounding the fitness levels to what it was originally, and you know, no disrespect to. I mean, I was speaking to Salon the other week, and she said to me, "I've known you for 8 years now." I'm thinking, God, really? You know, like you know, so from when she was there, because remember just before Christmas, it was her 30th birthday in October, wasn't it? October the 13th, to be precise. Because I've got a shirt with number 13 on, well, one of the training tops with 13 on it. So yeah, so like 8 years, and like the game, women's football in general, has just progressed on so much everywhere you go. because I go down to the training ground quite a lot, every time you walk past Elaine's and Jade's sports ground, there's tons of girls always out playing football, soccer. Yeah, so I mean, you wouldn't believe the progress, you know. So if you had to put the first girls team in with the training methods now, and specifically what Richie's implemented into the women's team, because I'll get lucky enough to get the chance to watch them train or whatever. So you think of like the progression from nothing into, the fitness levels, everything about the game is quicker, it's faster, it's more physical, and it's getting better. If anything, I would probably say it's getting to the point where maybe some players, it's become more about, well, it should always be a team effort, but you kind of see less individual players around now than what you would have done, because the individual players will be stood out because of the physicality of the other players, So if you're physical, but sometimes maybe a little bit of individuality has gone out of the game. But that's across not just women's level, that's across a lot of levels in football or even sport in general.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because when I first learned about them, I didn't knew okay, that was before when Britt and Lucy told me that story about where the team started and how the name of Spicy Football was originated from before it carried the ethos into what, this Dulwich Hamlet's team is all about, that fans got to know and name themselves before, it's 5 years in the regional leagues before getting promoted to the National League. It's astonished, for anyone, as a player, a fan, or staff like you, Richie, would have known how this team has grown. And I know they come and go, but do you think it's grown significantly in short space of years?
It's grown in the last 3 months. I can see that the way Richie's works them on the training pitch, but also there's another thing. So one of the other ones is that they're fast tracking referees because they can't keep up with the growing demand of football across, women's football in particular. Years ago, you just had it'd be interesting to see how many women played grassroots football even 10 years ago to what they do now. So it has a knock-on effect that, you have to look for more officials, and now they're fast-tracking referees just so that they can keep up with the growing demand of women's football in particular on a Sunday, on a Sunday afternoon. So they need to fast-track referees because they simply don't have enough, So that's how much it's grown.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can see the progress has grown, but it's still a long way to go.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, and it's always going to be a sticking point. But once again, that's down to the way the FA distribute their funding, which I think is top heavy at the at the WSL, and it doesn't trickle down to me far enough to get more people involved in it. So that's. I mean, you would know, being a Chelsea fan, all the money's at the top end of the game, and it's not trickling down. And
Exactly.
it should do. There should be a bigger investment in women's football.
And let me ask Big Al, how long have you been a Dulwich Hamlet fan for? And what was your first impression of the women's team?
So I first sort of came to the Hamlet in late 2018, obviously for a men's game then. It was really as a result of a mate who he would go occasionally, and he told me he thought I'd really enjoy the atmosphere, and the ethos of the club, especially after the chaotic year that the club had with the enforced move to Tooting earlier that year. But because that ended in promotion to National League South, I thought, I'm going to go along on any sort of home Saturdays that I have spare. I mean, I had young kids at the time, so didn't have quite as much time as I do now. I've been a Leeds fan actually since the early 70s. That's really where my football journey started. And I've also been going to sort of World Cups and Euros since Italia 90. So although, I've watched a lot of top level football, I also grew up in Carlo. And so I'd seen lots of lower league football, regularly as a kid. Although non-league football was reasonably new to me. But actually, the FA Cup game that we played against Carl in 2019 made me realise that I was becoming sort of increasingly more invested in the fortunes of this club, and almost to the extent that they were starting to actually replace Carlisle as my second team. Unfortunately, a couple of months later, the pandemic put a stop to non-league football. But I sort of resolved during that time to get more involved with the club as and when football resumed at the level that we play at. I mean, regarding the women's game, it was the success of the Lionesses really at Euro 22 that sort of, I say reawakened, it probably awakened my interest in female football. I mean, when I was born, women's football was 47 years into a 50-year FA ban, which just sounds ridiculous to contemplate now. So I started attending the women's games in the 23-24 season, which was the year I got my first season ticket. And so I was pretty fortunate to experience the promotion roundabout evening early on in my women's watching sort of career, if you like, in May 24. And that really opened my eyes as to how important women's football was to this club and how important it could be and was becoming to other clubs as well. So I now go to most of the women's home games, occasional aways. I mean, the Lewis FA Cup tie last season was particularly memorable, and I enjoyed our trip to Leatherhead this year. So that's where I am as regards the women's game and my Hamlet watching experiences.
Nice. Sorry, nice. Very, very nice to hear that journey, Al. And well, it's like me. I started out, following Chelsea men to begin with before started to know about women's football from that side, and then explored other teams and divisions afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I will always, because they're my sort of first love, I will always be a Leeds fan, I think. I think the first football team that you ever support, it's difficult to move away from that, even though I'm not a great fan of the way that the Premier League has developed into a sort of all-consuming morass of money men and multi-club ownership. But there's nothing I can, as a fan, do about that. So I still support my team in that sense. But what actually non-league football and Dulwich Hamlet in particular allows me to do is go back to watching football almost like I did when I was a kid, standing on terraces at Carlisle United. Because, when they were, well, it was the third division then, League One now, the crowds were not that dissimilar to the crowds that Hamlet gets. And you felt more in touch with the team when you were representing, in my case, my hometown team I was going to watch. And although I don't live in Dulwich, I'm London-based, and so South London-based. So it's the natural fit for me.
So could you recap what you said on, obviously, when I said, obviously, you said you're still a massive Leeds fan, but you're still like, keep it like more, what's the word, back and forth on, like, you still watch your team, but also still support Dulwich at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like watching different types of the same sports, like watching some athletic events. You can watch sprinting, you can watch long distance running, you can watch javelin throwing. They're all athletic events, and they're all part of the same sort of sport. I mean, watching higher level football, I watch in a very different way to watching non-league football. The aesthetic of watching higher level football appeals to me, and also, I'm of that generation that's still waiting for England to finally win a trophy, if we ever do. And I've been quite invested in that journey. But at the same time, my weekly watching is the Hamlet, and that's a community. We're a community club that welcomes people, even who start their Hamlet journey as late as I did, I feel part of the club in a way that I'm not sure I would have felt in other clubs that certainly that I've visited in the non-league games that I've been to. We seem to be a real club that you really can be anybody that you want to be, and nobody queries you. So that's important to me if I'm going to watch football at the non-league level.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like it's very nice to see, people, no matter what culture or what beliefs you believe in, always respect everyone's boundaries and respect of their beliefs, no matter no one likes what you like or what people may not like, an opinion or your cup of tea or a pint, more or less. But I can say, for someone like you always have acceptance of people to let you in, regardless of what you believe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, going back to Richie's football journey. I mean, this is a man who's represented his country, and yet his football journey has taken him to start managing at this level of football. We all love football. That's why we're here, and it doesn't really matter in many ways what level of football you play at, manage, support. If we love the game, then watching football at all levels should be something that we're all interested in.
Exactly. And now let's move on to the follow-up questions that normally I ask the players in the previous episodes or what jobs or hobbies they do outside of Dulwich other than training. So, Richie, what do you do when you're not coaching and training, say in training like at training centre or when Dulwich have any matches? What do you like to do in your spare time?
Yeah, I don't get much spare time to be honest, but I work. I start early in the morning every day. I work at 6 a.m. every day in the gym. So I have my normal clients that I train through the day. I have some young players that I train, young footballers that I train in the afternoons on Monday, Tuesday evenings. And then, yeah, a lot of the rest of the time is just preparing for the match on the Sunday, reviewing opposition,
Hmm.
thinking about the type of planning for the week how we're going to train in prep for the opposition and the learning that we need to improve on from the last game. So there's a lot of work in that, and really setting the stall out to improve on what happened last week and be ready for the next game. So there's a lot of deciphering of information that needs to be done to calm down and try and relax. Um, I might get an hour five-a-side game of football in or a seven-a-side, eight-a-side on the London app that they have, Footy Addicts. So I might join in a football game somewhere. Or what I tend to do is a couple of me mates that I played with are coaching as well. So we'll all jump on. We've resorted to getting on the PlayStation and playing Call of Duty together. So we'll talk about our day and our tactics, and we'll actually go over football stuff while we're playing Call of Duty. So it's a great way to have us almost disconnecting from football and for it not being work while trying to have a little bit of fun, but also learning and picking each other's brains, because the learning never stops and you'll always learn something from somebody else. And the guys train at different clubs, so everybody does things a little bit different. So you might hear something that you think, oh, I'll take that, I'll nick that one. And I just actually told the player, one of our strikers, a secret that one of my mates told me. He's played for Ireland and he's actually scored for Ireland, scored a big goal for Ireland.
Wow.
And yeah, he scored a big goal for Ireland against Italy. Um, so yeah, he taught me a great technique for strikers, but I'm not going to tell you because it's our secret now. So
Okay.
these are little things that you learn from other players and other coaches. So that tends to be my evening, and then I'll do the usual crazy stuff. I'll do a bit of sauna, a bit of cold bath. Go to the gym myself and train myself. And I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading, a lot of podcast listening. So I'll probably re-listen to this one, make sure I don't make mistakes. But I do a lot of heavy reading at the moment. There's a lot going. There's a lot of pharmaceutical stuff I'm reading at the minute, and then I'll jump out of that and I'll go into a bit of fiction, and then I'll go back
Mm.
into a heavy book again. So I tend to dip in and out of them just to give myself an emotional break from the those serious books, you know. So yeah, that's how I spend my time away from Dulwich.
Very interesting. All during the week, more not much relaxing, just more workout. You train with some with some clients, with some people, but also at the same time just prepping like next matches, what you got coming up. So it's pretty much like in a nutshell, you're pretty much just still busy.
Yeah, there's no days off. Unfortunately, I don't get any days off. You know, it's a lot of football and then a lot of training other people and looking out for them and making sure that they're getting their workouts in and they're staying fit and they're ready to attack their day. Because a lot of the training sessions that they do are that's their only time for themselves really. So it's a really important hour for that person, you know. So that's why I have to be on all the time. It's got to be everything has got to be at a high standard. So yeah, there's not much relaxing. But when I relax, I do relax, which even though it's not that often, I do try to chill right out.
Well, I don't think well, I mean for me, during the week I do training in the gym and I run and play football, well, train football on Fridays, and occasionally we play once a month at Rectory Park. So occasionally there are some days I never relax, unless if I'm not working, but I don't want to because what's there to do, like not to relax, unless you just want to have a wind down. But for yourself, Richie, it always seems that you wanted to gobbin and go.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's always been for me. I've always had two, three jobs going. You know, it's always been like that. I've always played football, had two jobs. I remember at one point I was playing for when I was playing for Belvedere, my last year at Belvedere before I went to Shamrock Rovers. I had three jobs. I worked in two different shops, and then I was also selling stuff for another guy I knew, and I was also doing a college course. So it was very busy. And then when I went to Shamrock Rovers, I got an apprenticeship as an electrician. So I was doing that. You do the job, you do on the job and your study. You do your college as well, while playing for Shamrock Rovers and trying to get into Europe and playing for the Irish 21s and going on trips and taking time off school. So it's always been very busy until I became a full-time pro, and then it was a bit of a shock to the system just to train for 2 hours in the morning. You know, I couldn't get used to being so free, and I had that for quite a few years, so I was very lucky. But then obviously when I finished playing football, it's straight back into work again, which it wasn't too much of a shock for me to get back into work and to be very busy again and
Mm.
work all day because I was used to doing that. So yeah, it's been a bit of a time, but you do what you can, you do what makes you happy, and football makes me happy, so I don't mind being involved in it.
Very nice to hear, Richie. I think I wish I could be someone like you to keep on working and keep on like training, but also it's a bit like a norm.
Yeah, you do what has to be done, Johnny. You know, you do what has to be done, and when you live in Dublin in the 80s and 90s, you learn that no one's going to do it for you. You have to get up and do it yourself. You know, nothing's handed to you. So you have to fight for every breadcrumb in Dublin back in them days, you know.
Exactly. And Joe, what do you do when Dulwich women's first team or the reserves are not playing?
Well, I would say I would call myself a jack of all trades, master of none. I just like all different sports. I mean, I run loads of marathons. I think 28 full marathons. So I've snapped my Achilles heel about 7 years ago. So I haven't been able to go on long runs, but I used to go on. So the marathon's the easy part. The training is the hard part, as anybody would tell you. So I run. I was a marathon runner for years, and I run in Reykjavik, around the world, Dresden, Boston, London twice, Dublin 6 times. As I say, the marathon's easy. It's the lap of honour that gets you. No, but yeah. So I've done loads of marathons, but in generally in sport, I've got in the house here, I've got table tennis, I've got a pool table, anything really, anything to be a little competitive at. You know, I just like, and obviously I played and run the supporters team for a number of years, for 8 years as well. Just recently, when we came back from Hamburg, the tour of Hamburg, that was my last ever game. So just getting a bit on, you know. Even it got to the point where the WD-40 wasn't even working, you know. So I've stopped playing football now. But also loads of music gigs. In my job, I used to work, you know, basically in town, and I'd just go to loads of music gigs throughout the years, you know. So, you know, and now my new hobby is, because I can't do anything, is drinking Guinness. No, you know, so yeah, loads of stuff. I just like all sports, from the Gaelic games. You know, I've been over to see Dublin in GAA. I go to a few Irish games a year, the League of Ireland, because it's just started up now and finishes in October, November. So that their season is just underway. You know, it's just literally just started. So I try and pop over and see a few games in the League of Ireland. So yeah, it never really stops. So you know,
Really
that's how I bide my time.
Really interesting. Marathon.
Yeah.
How long you've done the marathon for?
Oh, I've done. Do you know what? I started my first half one was in Peterborough in 1996. That was only a half, and my time was 1 hour and 17 for 13 miles. But it never got much better than that. But I just enjoyed the whole buzz. I've done, as I said, I've done Dublin. The half marathons are enjoyable as well. They're probably more enjoyable. You know, I've done the Great North Run. Yeah, so, and you know, particularly for a lot of charities. I used to run particularly for autistic charities, because one of them was called the Toby Henderson Trust, because they don't anything to do with autism. They don't receive any government funding at all, because it's too broad to what autism is. So they don't get anything. So if I was ever going to do anything, it'd be for generally anything to do with autism as well. So yeah. So obviously we got invited around the grounds as well, the schools, and met all the kids before I'd done the Great North Run. So they're in the north of England. Yeah. So, you know, but it was, you know, so when you run, like, you know, and you're visiting other countries, so it's like broadens your experience on everything, really. Yeah. So, yeah, apart from that, I don't do anything. No, but, you know, so, you know.
Wow. I say I'm impressed of, you know, all the marathons you done. And you said like you played football like in the past before you decided you couldn't continue any further.
Yeah, I played for years. I played for a team that never lost a game for 3 years, and I was the youngest member. And that was the hardest time, because one of our captains signed for Dulwich Hamlet, somebody signed for Millwall, and all the good players had gone, and I was the only one. I was the last man standing, or kid standing at the time, and it was very difficult when you play. When you're kind of like spoon-fed, you know, I didn't have to do much on the football pitch, because I was surrounded by really good players who played at decent level of football. When you're the last one, and you're playing against teams that you used to have 18-0, that was really, really difficult times, actually, when you look back on it, because they would like, yeah, you're not so cocky now, because people just remember you, you know what I mean? Like, you know, especially when you got on the football pitch, you know, people got long memories, you know, because we used to play exhibition football, you know, we used to mess around to halfway through a game, which we shouldn't have done. But then again, we was only kids, 12, 13, 14, you know, so, I played with some really decent players. So my cousin, who went on to play for Crystal Palace, and he was in the team, Crystal Palace and Plymouth Argyle, you know, so, yeah.
That's very nice in depth to know about the deep secret of Joe McGin.
It's not a deep sea. I'll tell everybody that I won 6 medals in 4 years, and never won any for 30 years after that. But that's football for you.
Well, maybe for some, but have you told everyone at Dulwich Hamlet about that?
No, one or two people know Peter Kingston. As I said, he was a captain. He's on the board in there, playing over 400 games for Dulwich. So a lot of the old fans remember him. He actually came to a game this season. I met him at one of the games. So so he still occasionally goes. So he played for Dulwich for years, and then he played for Tooting as well. So
Very interesting.
yeah.
And now, Al, when Dulwich aren't playing, what do you do outside when Dulwich aren't playing?
So at this time of year, actually starting next week, I umpire for a cricket team that plays its home games actually in at Elaine School, which is next to Dulwich Cricket Club. So, my sort of social life all the year round is based around Dulwich, even though I don't live here, with the cricket during the summer and the football in the other seasons. We also play at the Griffin Sports Club as well. But I'm actually just about to start a writing project. Basically, I want to document my football experiences that I've had over the years since going to watch my first sort of live game when I was a 9-year-old. And my plan is to choose one game in each calendar year from 1977 through to 2026, which is 50 years, and basically describe the experience that I had watching these games. And that's not just the 90 minutes. In fact, it's less about the 90 minutes. It's about the pre-match, the post-match, why the match was important to me, context of it, and basically they're stories. It's you could probably summarise it as 50 years of sort of football yarns. But I've been fortunate enough to travel quite widely and watch a large variety of football matches in many different countries and at many different levels. And when you do it for as long as I have, there are stories to tell. And I feel like it's something I should document before I forget about them, perhaps. But also to put something down, for me to look back on, perhaps later on in life.
And Al, the writing to document everything like on football, how long have you been working on that?
So I haven't. It's been a sort of an idea for a couple of months. I do know a few people in the publishing world and in the football world, and I recently wrote a piece for a website just really to see if this was the sort of thing that I could do, and it got published. So I was quite pleased that it was something that the website felt was worthy of publication. So it's not something I've done before, but it's something I think that it would be a good project for me to focus on in the next however long it takes. So basically, so far of the 50 stories that I have to tell, I've written one of them, probably the hardest one to write, because trying to remember some of the games that you went to in your younger years is not always as easy. And I've managed to come up with what I think is a reasonable go at that. And there'll be some years that are far easier to do, and some games where I'm going to have to be far more concise than I sometimes am, just because of the story that could be told. So this may have absolutely no relevance to anybody else but myself, but I feel like it's something I should do. And then if it's of any interest to anybody else, then I'll make it available for people to read.
Nice. Are we going to read the book anytime soon?
Well, I don't like to use the word book, because I think that's looking at it from a perspective of I've not had a people say you've got a book in you, but at the same time, getting a book published, I know you can self-publish these days. It might be a series of Substack columns. It might be. I don't know how it's going to work out. The key to it for me is to write it and to document it, and then once that's happened, how it gets into the public domain, if it does, is we can see about that. And that's not the most important thing about it. The important thing actually is doing the writing for myself.
Yeah. And I want to ask you about this cricket team. I mean, I know some people like have different passion of other sports, but you like cricket, and what made you like cricket, and how did you heard of this cricket team that's next to the Dulwich cricket team or some sort?
So this cricket team sprung up during, it's a very young team actually, sprung up during COVID, and was formed by people who were working. Sometimes some of them were working for Surrey County Cricket Club. Some of them were working as cricket journalists, reporters in the cricket world as such, or real cricket fans. And they started netting at the Oval, and the club sort of took shape from there. And we've grown really quickly in the 6 years that we've been since we've been formed. It's been driven forward by a couple of guys who are very motivated to get us some really high quality fixtures. And as somebody who doesn't play cricket anymore, umpiring is a way to keep me in touch with the game itself, but also, again, going back to the same thing with Dulwich Hamlet, the social side of sport is very important to me. And cricket is also a game that, let's say, enjoys its social side as well as the competitive side that you have when you play any sport. The level that we play at can vary quite widely from some very high quality players that we play against, and also some players who play for us, to the more sort of recreational Sunday type players. But the important thing is that everybody enjoys themselves, and we have a couple of beers afterwards, and there's a good club ethos. We managed to go on tour a few times as well. Last year we went to Barcelona, which I went on as the umpire for that, and this year to Malta. It's nice to get away at February, March time to a sunnier climate than here. But it also had a great team bonding exercises, and the guys that make up the team are all a great bunch of guys. So it's something that, again, really is important to me from a social perspective, as well as the keeping involved in the sport itself.
Right. I don't think if anyone imagined after encountering Dulwich Hamlet, it's hard to imagine, say, what if you never come across to them at all? I mean, Richie, have you ever had like some scenarios in your head, particularly like whether if you have not got into playing or coaching, it would have been a massive difference had you not step into the BFL game, because otherwise it wouldn't lead you to opportunities before you joined Dulwich Hamlet, en route, indirect, somewhere in between.
If I hadn't have started playing football, I really wouldn't like to know where I would have ended up. Where I'm from in Dublin at that time, it was very tough to get out of that area unless you did something exceptional. The people I hung around with at certain times weren't the most stand-up people in the community. So I think I was very, very lucky to have football. If I didn't have football, I would, yeah, I would dread to think where I'd be right now. Football, I will say, saved my future. So I've a lot to thank my granddad for, because he's the one that made me walk up every Saturday morning to the club until they allowed me to play. So every Saturday we go up, and I was 2 years too young, and he just kept me coming up, kept me going up, got me into the habit, and I think that's why he did it. Got me into the habit of every Saturday I knew there was a match. So then it was just a matter of getting in and training, and then getting a game. And then once I got a game, that was it. Then I was in. So yeah, if I didn't play football, hopefully I would have done something good in school, and got a good job. As I said, I was an electrician, so I did qualify as an electrician. But I also got that because I was playing football. So because they knew I was a footballer, they took me into this company. Because in them days, it was very hard to get into an apprenticeship in any of the trades if your family wasn't involved in that trade. So it was usually passed down through. There was a lot of nepotism in the trade system in Ireland. And yeah, because I played football, I had a principal actually that I didn't think liked me, funny enough. And he actually, because I did very well for the school football team, he got me an apprenticeship, and that got me out of a lot of trouble then as well, also. So yeah, let's see. Look, I don't know where I would have been, but I don't think it would have been very enjoyable. But now, thank God, I did get involved in football, and yeah, I'm at Dulwich now, and really enjoying my time here.
Yeah. I mean, if you have not got into football, I mean, apart from like say a job, but were there any Irish sports you had in mind if say football didn't happen?
I think I tried my hand at Gaelic football. I wasn't great, and hurling, no, I wouldn't have done hurling. I'm not tough enough for that sport. So, and I like my nose and my teeth. So, yeah, I wouldn't have done hurling either. I have a cousin that lost all of his front teeth from that, and I
Ouch.
definitely wouldn't be strong enough for that. I think it would have been boxing because I was in the boxing club, so I actually had to choose between boxing and football. So I think it would have been boxing that I would have done instead of football if I was doing another sport. So yeah, the boxing guys were very popular around our area. So yeah, that would have been the thing I would have done.
I tried Gaelic when I was at uni, and to be honest, I haven't got hit or hurt, but at least I was still standing.
Yeah, well, a fight was pretty much guaranteed when you played Gaelic football, and I wasn't really a fighter back in them days. I didn't really like fighting, even though I was doing boxing. I didn't like the fact that you could play a match and get a punch, in the face for running with a football. So yeah, and they were allowed to do it. So fighting was almost encouraged in Gaelic football back in them days. But yeah, so I would have been boxing with a pair of gloves on, and probably would have having a fatter nose at this point in my life.
Hmm. Well, I think that's what if scenario would never happened if you step into any other sports, but I think football is probably the best option.
Yes, yes, definitely.
And Joe, what would you do if you haven't come across Dulwich Hamlet?
Well, I've still got lots of irons in the fire. So I'm still, even coming up now, I've just renewed my membership. I'm a season ticket holder at Surrey County Cricket. So, and there's a lot of people at Dulwich who actually go to the cricket as well. I tend to meet them now. So I might even go and watch on a nice warm morning, go up to the Oval and watch maybe for 2 or 3 hours on the county championship games, um, but I always had kind of a lot of irons in the fires in other sports. I always generally liked sport. If Wimbledon come round, I was pretty awful at golf. I was a member of a golf club in Nunhead for a few years called Aquarius. So I was a member there, but golf was not my game. So I was average at it. If you reach a certain point and you can't improve, I'll just think, well, what's the point? I suppose I don't see things. There's no point in doing something for fun. You have to do it to play your best. You know what I mean? That's the way I see sport in a way.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, too many sports I've probably followed. Yeah. I said like Al. I mean, I played cricket twice for a team, and they asked me to play, but it takes up the whole of your Sunday. Like you're up at 8 in the morning and then you don't get home till 8 o'clock at night. It's a long, long day out when you play cricket. Even if you're playing 36 hours matches. So I played a couple of games for a guy that he was a New Zealander actually. He's a really good cricketer. So I played for him a couple of times, but I couldn't commit myself to playing every Sunday because basically it takes up all your Sunday, I still try and play. I haven't played tennis for a while, but I used to play a lot of tennis in Greenwich Park every single Thursday night for 25 years until you had to download the app and sign up for the app. You just turn up and play, and there'd be a warden in the park who'd come around and collect your money. So, but yeah, just too many sports I'm interested in. Now I like all sports really. Like we've got the snooker coming up. You've got the Grand National next week. So I've always keep my options open. I've been to loads of different sporting events. So it would anything to do with sport really. Yeah. So.
Wow,
Yeah.
very good to know that, cricket would be the other option, but I guess I guess football is more
Yeah,
like
it's
you
over
like.
in London, isn't it? So yeah,
Yeah.
so
And Al, what would you do if you haven't come across Dulwich Hamlet, let alone the women's team? What would you be doing differently right now?
Um, given when I started getting really interested in Dulwich and the Hamlet in general, it was about the time when COVID sort of put our lives on hold, and probably for a lot longer than we ever imagined when it first happened. This was it was a terrible time for many people. They lost family, they lost friends, they lost employment, and so then I resolved to myself, when a semblance of normality was going to return to life. I think a lot of us maybe had time to reevaluate what was important to them. And for me, I had decided I'm going to watch a live football match on every single weekend I possibly can. And Hamlet was the natural fit for me to do that. So life without Dulwich would have been different. Especially as I can't imagine that another club would have been as welcoming as Hamlet have been since I sort of started attending regularly in 2022. So I would have had to have chosen another club to follow instead. As I say, that probably wouldn't have been as rewarding as being at Champion Hill so often in the last 4 years. But I love sport, and I would have had to have found another team that, excuse me, that I could have invested in and continued watching live football, which is what I wanted to do. Had football in general not been available to me, again, I've sort of emphasised my love of cricket, but that's a short season, even though it seems to become longer with every year. I'm also interested in rugby. I'm basically a bit of a sport badger, and so I would have followed a sporting team in some shape or form. And therefore, my life would have been different, but not so different as perhaps, what Richie describes as his alternatives had football not come into his life, because football obviously didn't form. I'm a football watcher as opposed to being a football player. So I don't think that would have affected, my work and what I did, in the workplace. But it's really important, I think, to have hobbies, interests outside of what you do for a living. And if it hadn't been football, if it hadn't been Hamlet, it would have been somebody else, because I love the game, and I would have found another team, I guess.
Yeah, I can't imagine, if it wasn't for any important bits in your life, lads, gents, it would have been massively different where you are. I mean, you all agree, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, obviously, life takes different turns. I'm a parent of what is now a 24-year-old lad and a 19-year-old girl, and you do have to revise your lifestyle slightly when you're parents of young children. You don't quite have the freedom to do everything that you might wish to do for yourself, but you get the enjoyment from watching my son play football, watching my daughter play netball or gymnastics. My son played cricket as well. So you're living almost vicariously through your children a little bit when you take them to their sporting events, and you get pleasure out of watching them just as much as you do watching football or sport at whatever level it is that you do.
Very nice to hear. So after the first half round of drinks, as the pub bells rings out, I could pretty much say, we're ready for the second half round, gents, as we begin straight away after this advert. And hopefully, if anyone's not too drunk by the end, we'll still be standing, as Elton John once says. Let's dive back into it to the IOC, shall we?